back to this week's episode of The Locker Room. I'm your host, Jake Homan. Here today we have two returning special guests. We have Juliana Dreschel and Jake Arnold. Thanks a lot for coming on the show today, guys.
Thank you.
Well, I first want to get started talking about UFC 244. We haven't yet talked about the UFC this season. And this matchup, we were talking about Jorge Masvidal taking on Nate Diaz. We saw this end in a Jorge Masvidal victory in a TKO after the third round. Although it was quite controversial because the doctor's decision of Nate Diaz's couple cuts he has in his face, that was why they called it. You know, even though you could argue Masvidal might have been winning the fight at that point, there were still 2 rounds to go, and a lot of people can argue that Nate Diaz, that's his best time playing in the late rounds. But what do you guys think? Did the doctor make the right call in this one? I'll start with you, Jake.
From a perspective of he's bleeding, obviously.
Yeah.
So while that may be common in the UFC, it's not common in other sports where a player is immediately pulled if they're bleeding. In the UFC, it's allowed. So I think this was the wrong call at that point. I think he could have still kept going. I think he should have been able to make his own decision under his own discretion. Now, if he was maybe semi-conscious at that point, then the right decision would be to pull him. But I think he should have been able to keep moving forward.
Okay, and what about you, Juliana?
I totally agree with that. I think that, he even told the doctor that he was fine, and he showed...
And they're always going to say that, though. You know,
but, I feel like he clearly showed that he could at least keep going, and, it's it's UFC, there's going to be blood,
course,
and I feel like it just wasn't the right decision, because I feel like a couple more rounds could have been played.
I feel like almost every fight Nate Diaz is always bleeding, too. Even if he's the one that ends up being victorious, it looks like he's the one that should have lost because the damage he takes to his face. But do you guys think that there would have been any chance for Diaz to make a comeback there in the late couple rounds if they continued?
I still don't think so. I think he was kind of getting wailed on closer to the end. While he may have shown a little bit more fight, I don't think he was going another 2 rounds.
Yeah. And what about you, Juliana?
I would agree that I don't think that he could have won it, but he did in the third round show a lot more fight, a lot more offensively, rather than he did the first couple of rounds. So he could have, had a shot, but I still didn't see him as the winner.
Yeah, and I think as we know now, Nate Diaz has kind of hinted at retirement, saying he doesn't want a rematch with Masvidal. It's not going to happen, and that he might just... I forget what he quoted or what his exact words were, but he hinted at retirement. So this may be the last fight we see Nate Diaz in the ring. And interesting going forward, Conor McGregor is actually going to be coming back in a couple months, so it should be interesting. I remember hearing Masvidal talk about McGregor. That would be a exciting matchup to look forward to. But moving on, I want to get started on the year of the NFL backup quarterbacks this year. There's been a lot of new faces in the league taking the position of the quarterback this year for many different teams. A few I want to mention, maybe Bridgewater, taking over Breeze when he got hurt. Mason Rudolph taking over for Big Ben when he got hurt in Pittsburgh. Gardner Minshew, the rookie out of Washington State, taking over for Nick Foles in Jacksonville. Kyle Allen taking over for Cam Newton in Carolina. And now even these past couple weeks, we saw Ryan Tannehill come back and take over the spot from Marcus Mariota. Pat Mahomes injured a couple weeks ago. Matt Moore been playing pretty well. And even Andrew Luck, you could argue, after he announced his retirement before the season even started, Jacoby Brissett is now the starting quarterback for that team, and he's had a pretty good season in his first year as a starter. But yeah, out of these handful of quarterbacks, who has surprised you the most or made the biggest impact for their team?
Me personally, you could probably guess this as a Vikings fan. Bridgewater is one of my favorite players of all time just because I love him. I think he played amazing. I think what I want to go back to is when Stephen A. Smith, right when Breeze got out, he goes, the Saints are done without Breeze, period. And Bridgewater showed that he's not just a backup. He kind of showed light to what he was before he got injured, and I just think that he made such a huge impact on the team. And he kept it together. He went undefeated the entire time, and I think that was amazing.
All right, and what about, who's your take?
Hands down, Gardner Minshew. What other quarterback have you seen so many people dress up as for Halloween? Honestly.
Minshew
Mania has swept the nation. He might have had a couple down weeks his last few weeks now that Nick Foles is back to starting.
Yeah.
But he was an exciting rookie to watch. He was an exciting backup to watch, and he kept people interested in the Jaguars.
Yeah. I also want to agree with you, though. I'm going to go with Bridgewater. He went 5-0, and when he took over Drew Brees' spot, I was kind of thinking the same thing. What are the Saints going to do that without Drew Brees? And did you steal my line? Because I was going to mention about how Stephen A. Smith got out of the Saints.
I was referring to the one Saints post where they
exactly. Well, I'm right on that. Like I said, Bridgewater led his team 5-0. It seems like that team just didn't miss a beat when Drew Brees was gone, and I bet he can't be even more grateful for how his team didn't lose a single game of his absence. Only game they lost was when he got injured or whatever. But the interesting thing, though, going forward is that Bridgewater will most likely be getting a big paycheck in his next couple of years.
Definitely.
I don't know what his contract is done with New Orleans, but even if he didn't perform like Drew Brees may perform, like statistical-wise, you could easily argue that Bridgewater has put his name out there now and made everyone realize, hey, he's still as good as he was in Minnesota, even after the injury. But yeah, going forward, we always do our NFL picks of the week. So I have actually some really good games this week I want to talk about. First, I'll be talking about the Carolina Panthers taking on the Green Bay Packers. This one will be in Lambeau. And as we just talked about, Kyle Allen taking over the helm for Carolina because now Cam Newton's actually on the IR. So now it is confirmed he will not be returning this season for Carolina. And this one should be interesting because Kyle Allen, how will he face, the pressure in Lambeau this season? I'll start with you, though. Who you got in this one?
Packers had a bad game last week. We can't deny that. They lost to the Chargers, who are not a great team, as we've seen. They're going to rebound. Aaron Rodgers always finds a way to lead his team somehow to the playoffs, no matter what. I think that this is their game. It's going to be a statement win over Kyle Allen's first official start as the Panthers quarterback for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
I think that they're going to take the game and just run away with it.
Okay, and what about you, Juliana?
I think as much as I hate to say it, I think that at Lambeau with Green Bay, especially after an awful loss last week, they're going to take it. I mean, they are dominant this year. They look good, and especially in Lambeau, and I think it snowed there earlier this week. So, I mean, they've got it's the wintertime Lambeau almost. And
that's primetime Packer football, right? It's hard to agree with that on that one.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go with Green Bay as well. It's a clean sweep here. One thing, though, is that in the two losses Green Bay has faced this year, they've played Philadelphia and they've played the Chargers, like you just mentioned. In those two losses, they let up a lot of rushing yards. Like the Chargers and the Eagles, if you want to know how to beat the Packers, it's run it down their throats.
Yes.
Punch them in the face. And the Panthers, as you know, has Christian McCaffrey, one of the leading rushers in the NFL right now. So this weekend should be interesting. I'm still sticking with Green Bay, though, because of just kind of like a emotional type of win here, because they're going to come back into Lambeau even more energized after the disappointment last week in LA. And like I said, it will be interesting because the Panthers could easily make this a game and easily win this game if they get their running game going, just like the Chargers and the Eagles did. And so the second game of the week, we have a Sunday night football game between the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Dallas Cowboys. I'll start with you, Jake. Who you got in this one?
This is a very interesting matchup. I think they're both very equally matched teams. They both have good run defenses. They both have good running backs.
Yep.
I think it may come down to the air battle and which quarterback can win, whether that's Dak or Kirk Cousins. I'm going to take the Vikings, but narrowly, especially since they're missing one of their premier wide receivers this week.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the Vikings may win it.
Okay. And what about you, Juliana?
I mean, it's obviously who I'm going to pick on this. I'm obviously going with the Minnesota Vikings, but it's going to be a good game. I mean, it's prime time, and I'm sure everyone knows Kirk Cousins' stats in prime time and how he tends to play in prime time, so I'm a little hesitant on that, but I mean, I have to go with the Vikings. I got to trust Dalvin Cook and Stephon Diggs in this one. Yeah.
Dalvin Cook, though, did say that he's going to try and outperform Zeke, so that should be interesting, especially because you could argue Dalvin Cook and Zeke are right now two of the best running backs in the game. So it definitely will be like a running type game between these two teams. The Vikings, though, Kirk Cousins is 8.8 yards per attempt in the passing game, which ranks first in the league. So that might be the difference maker in this one. I don't know how well Dallas' defense is against the pass. I think it's pretty good, but not necessarily good enough where you could count Kirk Cousins out. But like you said, Kirk Cousins, primetime game, his record's not that good against above 500 teams. So I'm going to have to go with the Cowboys in this one just for the fact that, A, it's prime time. They seem to always shine with lights on them. And then secondly, it's in Dallas. So it's a big home field advantage for them not to go with that one. And finally, this might be the best game of the entire week. It'll be the last game of the week, which is on Monday night. We'll see the Seattle Seahawks coming into San Fran, taking on the undefeated San Francisco 49ers. 8-0 for the first time since 1990. Who you got in this one, Juliana?
I have to go with the 49ers on this one.
Okay.
I mean, I think it'll be a really good game, but they have the home field advantage, and I mean, I'd like to see them keep going and keep being winning out, or at least like for this game. I feel like it'd be interesting, but I think it could be a good game against Russell Wilson and the Seahawks.
Yeah.
Like, you never really know how this one's going to go, but I'm going to go with the 49ers.
All right. What about you, Jake?
West Coast primetime is always incredible because the sun's just setting as the game starts.
Yeah.
So fun to watch. But I'm going to have to take the Seahawks.
Okay.
As fun as the 49ers have been on this undefeated run, I love chaos.
Yeah.
So I'd like the Seahawks win this week.
Yeah, I have to agree with you as well. The Seahawks. Russell Wilson right now, I think, is the number one MVP candidate. I mean, we saw that last week in his game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He threw for what, five touchdowns, I think it was. And I'm the kind of guy that likes to think numbers don't lie. And so this past Thursday, not this past Thursday night, but last week, the 49ers, they kind of caught a close one with Arizona. And Kyler Murray, a lot of people did not expect him to play well against that San Fran defense, which we know has been a struggle for a lot of quarterbacks this season. I mean, I think his numbers were, 17 to 24, 230 yards, 2 TDs, which is pretty solid. And they only lost by 3, so he was able to keep them in the game, keep the game going. And then when you talk about Russell Wilson, with the streak he's on, I'm going to have to go with Seattle on this one because, A, San Fran's got to lose at some point. There's no way they're going to go 16-0. I mean, if they're not going to lose this one against Seattle, then they're probably going to lose the second one against them, which will be in Seattle coming into the regular season. But, yeah, I'm going to stick with the Seahawks in this one, and that's the gut my going. So, all right. And if you guys don't have anything else you'd like to add, that's about all the time we have for today. So...
Yeah.
All right. Cool. All right. Well, yeah, thanks a lot. Once again, thanks a lot for coming to the show today, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate having you. And guys, for those of you watching, more on sports, check us right back here on The Locker Room.